live long and prosper. So in this video series, I'm going to be talking through the social justice elements of every episode of the original series of Star Trek. The thing that inspired this project was actually a Fox News article which argued that Star Trek has in some way betrayed its traditional commitment to sort of political neutrality or middle ground by embracing progressive politics. In this series, we're going to see that Star Trek has always embraced progressive politics, and it's always been aspirational for social justice in various senses. I am taking a broad perspective on social justice here, so that may include multiple different types of social justice, whether that's racial, whether that's economic, whether that's religious, whether that's abilities, gender and sexuality, anything broadly considered. I will go through every episode. Some of the episodes I will interview fellow Trekkies and talk with them about it. And then below, in the descriptions, I will give you additional information about the episodes, particularly their original air date, who wrote the screenplay, and who directed that episode. I also want to dedicate this series to my dad, Michael Allen Zapkin. He was an OG Trekkie from back in the day, and it was watching the original series with him that I came to love Star Trek. In this video, we're going to talk about the Changeling. So this is one of the great Kirk argues a computer to death episodes. So if that's your jam, yay. So the premise of the Changeling is that the Enterprise is going out to this system where there's apparently supposed to be over 4 billion people, and they're like, there is literally nothing here. Like, everything is just gone. No life signs, the planets are destroyed, etc., etc. What the heck could have happened? Then they get attacked by this sort of giant energy weapon, and they're like, holy shit, that is unlike anything we've ever seen before. 90 times as powerful as a photon torpedo. And then they shoot a photon torpedo at it, and it does not destroy the thing that's attacking them. Which, it turns out, is Nomad. Nomad was a space probe that was sent out in the early 2000s. And what we learn is that it was seriously damaged. It merged with an alien probe called Tanru, and it created the new Nomad, drawing some of its programming from Nomad's goal, which was to go out and meet new civilizations. Some of its programming from Tanru, which its programming was basically to secure and sterilize soil samples from different planets. And it merged them together and just went off the rails. So Nomad's new programming is to seek out and sterilize biological infestations, by which it basically means destroy all living things that are imperfect, judged by the standards of its own mechanical logic. It spares the Enterprise because Kirk introduces himself as Captain James T. Kirk, and the designer of the Nomad space probe was called Jackson Roy Kirk. So Nomad's memory banks, because they were damaged, here's Kirk and says, this is the dude who created me. Therefore, I should probably report in. So Nomad comes aboard the Enterprise. It's doing stuff. It's like a super advanced AI system. It's like, hey, your warp drive input manifests, I think, manifold, something, I forget what it is exactly. He's like, these are inefficient. I can improve efficiency. by 57% or something like that. And is like, now Enterprise is traveling at like warp 11, which it theoretically can't do, although it kind of does it a few times. But anyway, so Nomad's like wandering around, like doing stuff. And it wipes Uhura's memory. It blasts Scotty when Scotty tries to stop it from wiping Uhura's memory. So then Scott is dead, but then Nomad's like, yeah, I can repair that. No worries. And then Scott's back alive. And eventually, Spock does a Vulcan mind meld with Nomad. So that's how they get sort of the information about here's what happened. Here's why it thinks it needs to seek out and sterilize biological infestations, etc., etc. And then finally, Kirk is like, well, maybe don't kill all the biological units, because I'm a biological unit and I created you. At which point, Nomad's like, I have to reevaluate. And then it goes to the sick bay, looks over Kirk's medical file and is like, yeah, that's a biological unit, all right. I don't really need to listen to Kirk anymore. And then finally, Kirk, Nomad goes to the engineering deck. It's shutting off life support, going to kill everybody on the crew, and then improve the Enterprise. And Kirk is like, this is where the arguing a computer to death bit comes in. Kirk is like, you have to seek out and sterilize all imperfection, right? And Nomad's like, that is my function. And Kirk's like, an error is imperfection. And Nomad's like, error is imperfection. And then Kirk is like, you are an error. You have to sterilize yourself. Because, A, I am not Jackson Roy Kirk. You made a mistake in identifying me as your creator when I'm not. You made a second mistake because you didn't figure out that you made the first mistake. Then you made a third mistake by not correcting those mistakes. So you need to sterilize yourself. At which point, Nomad's like, I'm freaking out, man. And so they clamp some anti-gravs on the side of Nomad, stick it in the transporter, transport it out into deep space. It blows itself up. Shockwaves hit the Enterprise, and everybody lives happily ever after. And they just like reteach Uhura everything in like 12 minutes. So yeah, so that's the Changeling. That's what's going on. There's definitely some interesting elements here. I think the biggest one that's really, really relevant for 2022, 2023. I'm filming this in 2022. It's going to go up in 2023. So I'm going to have to start thinking in a new year. But I think the biggest one that's sort of relevant for the 2020s is this concern about AI, about artificial intelligence. Because Nomad had a sort of rudimentary artificial intelligence when it was sent out from Earth, but when it merges with Tanru, Tanru had the alien probe Tanru had massive power. It had apparently vastly superior artificial intelligence. So it's not 100% clear why this new hybrid probe began identifying as Nomad rather than as Tanru, but, there we go. So that concern, like artificial intelligence, is becoming an increasingly important component of our societies. Facial recognition technology, for instance, raises major privacy concerns, particularly since there are issues with things like racial bias, either being built into artificial intelligence or sort of incidentally happening because of the way that information is fed to these systems, etc., etc. So things like facial recognition technology raise significant concerns. Self-driving cars, there's a lot of serious concerns about, like, the ethical decision-making of a self-driving car. If it's going to crash, and it has the option to crash either into a school or a hospital or something like that, how does it make a decision? These kinds of things. So there are these serious concerns about artificial intelligence. Now, this is more in sort of the Terminator vein, where it's artificial intelligence has sort of built upon itself and massively expanded its power, and it now poses an actual physical and or existential threat to humanity. So you've got that element of it. I mean, we're not quite at the, like, maybe we've built Terminators type phase, but we're definitely moving in that potential direction. And Nomad is in that vein of the, like, super intelligent computer with massive firepower that gets to make decisions about who lives and who dies. Battlefield drones, or not drones, but there's another thing. Battlefield AI is another one. There are emerging technologies, and there's a lot of questions about this, where AI robots, or whatever it is, would be authorized to decide whether or not to kill people in battlefield situations. That's definitely raising big ethical concerns. So that's, I think, a huge component of this, is that AI, the fear of what technology can do, and the fear of artificial intelligence, because it looks at the world in a different way than humans look at the world, even though humans often look at the world in very problematic ways. But that concern is definitely one major one in the episode. I think there's another interesting element dealing with Nomad itself, and this is kind of the paradox of Theseus's ship, which is a philosophical problem. Basically, the idea, the paradox is, Theseus docks his ship. The planks in it are replaced one by one until there are no more planks from the ship that was docked. Is it still Theseus's ship? This is an existential identity question. Like, what does it mean to be an entity that undergoes significant changes? Nomad was the Nomad probe that was sent out from Earth. That was damaged. It merged with Tanru, an alien probe that was not Nomad. Their identities fused, and it became a new Nomad. Is it still Nomad? And I think this is an important question for society, particularly in the context of trans people. This question of identity, the fluidity of identity. If you, for instance, if you identify as trans, are you still the same person? Let's say you choose a different name. Has that fundamentally changed who you are? What if you start hormone therapy? Has that fundamentally changed who you are? What if you undergo gender-confirming surgery, or like facial reconstruction surgery, or something like this? Is there a point at which you are no longer the same being that you were? The same self that you were? And if so, when does that point occur? But I would also point out that this is not just applicable to trans people. Born-again Christians, you've undergone some sort of fundamental shift in your identity. Are you still the same person? Sometimes trauma victims, people who experience really severe traumatic experiences, or something like a stroke, CTE, something like this, that shifts your personality. If there's something about you that dramatically changes, are you still the same person? And I was thinking, everyone has this experience, right? Because, like, if you put me right now, beginning of 2023, in a room with me from 30 years ago, am I the same person? Is that two versions of me? Sure, there's some experience of continuity there, but 30 years ago, I was 5-ish. I was much, much smaller than I am now, both in terms of height and in terms of weight. Had more hair at that point. I don't know that I even wore glasses at age 5. I don't remember when I got my glasses, but I don't remember that I wore glasses at the time. I definitely didn't know as much as I know now. If you just held us up sort of side by... I didn't have any tattoos. I've now got 8 tattoos. If you just held us up side by side and looked at us, it would be hard to say, yes, that's the same person. So am I the same person? And this is a philosophical paradox that has been pondered for millennia. I don't have an answer to it, obviously. But this is one of the things. Nomad raises this kind of question. Is this Nomad? Is this Tonru? Is this something distinct and new and different? And if so, what does that distinct, new difference mean? So that's an important question here as well. And then I think there's significance in terms of the way that Nomad conceptualizes the people that it encounters. It continually refers to them as units. Now, this is a very mechanistic way of thinking about it, and in terms of that, I don't have that much of a problem with it. Like, it does seem logical to me that a machine would think about humans as biological units. But that also raises interesting questions, because that's also the way that capitalism has traditionally attempted to orient people. Capitalism conceptualizes individuals as workers, as people who serve a particular function within the structure of productivity. And so that's problematic. It raises these questions, raises these concerns about how we understand ourselves. I mean, if Scott is a unit that has a function, its function is to perform engineering, then what does it really mean to be human? So again, I think I think this is an episode that raises a lot of interesting questions about identity, about stability, about what it means to be human versus what it means to be a machine or a robot or a part of a system that organizes you to be a cog rather than a dynamic, multifaceted individual.